Wow, Perry. Is it now or never for the Fife property market? Well, if you've just watched the budget there now, which I have, it's like, wow, it looks like everything's going to be solved this year and we're not going into recession at all. Job done, problem solved, economy back on track, according to the government.
Show over.
Inflation is going to be 2.9% by the end of the year. In a pig's eye. But is it now or never for the Fife property market? Traditionally, it's the first 4 months of the year that are usually an estate agent's busiest time of house sales. However, the last 3 years have taught us anything. It's nothing is normal or unusual anymore. That's a fact, isn't it?
Absolutely, 100%.
The Fife property market is actually finding that with the friction of higher mortgage rates and the effects of inflation on household budgets, things are slightly different in 2023 compared to the recent years that have just passed. So when I was asked what's happening now in the Fife property market, there's a more complex answer overall. The property market is funded on the balance of supply and demand, really is its fundamental core. And in 2021-22, demand, that's people wanting and able to buy, was bigger than the supply of properties available to buy themselves. Mm-hmm. Hence, Fife house prices rose at a meteoric rate. But let us see what's happening now in Fife in 2023. February's numbers, Perry? What's February's numbers so far?
Yeah, so I mean, it makes for interesting stats actually. So 536 properties sold subject to contract in Fife area in February, compared to 510 properties sold in February 22 and 509 sold in February 2021.
Hold it. Stop the bus here. You're telling me in a time where there's meant to be less house sales because of the two boom periods in the last 2 years past, the house sales now in February are more than the previous 2 years' house sales in February.
It's exactly what I'm telling you.
That makes that for me paints a bigger picture in terms of, is this actually, do we believe what is happening in terms of UK picture is actually happening in Fife then? That's what I'm beginning to think. Now, meanwhile, well, what about the number of properties coming to market then? Let's compare it against that.
But I think that, again, is quite a surprising statistic. I was quite shocked when I looked at it. So 567 properties came onto the market in the Fife area in February of this year.
Well, that's supply outperforming demand, because 567, 536.
Yeah.
So that's, I was kind of say it's even Stevens, really, because it could be swings and roundabouts each month as they go by, up and down. But
and it pretty much is a balance.
567, 536 is pretty good, so that shows us it's a pretty stable environment. Okay, so let's compare that to the previous 2 years then. So tell us the stats for what came on the previous 2 years.
So this is where it gets a little bit interesting when we talk about the crazy market that we had last year and the year before. So 567 this February, 483 last February.
Wow.
And 436 in February of 21.
So with a quick sprightly look at my calculator, minus 567, 131. So 131 divided by 436. So that is 30% more supply than February 2021. And I would take a ballpark, say, probably about 20% more supply than 2022.
Yeah.
That's quite interesting then. So why all of a sudden is all this supply coming into the market? You would have thought, if anything, in the boom times, it was the 2 previous years, that there'd be more supply than there would be now. So I'm sitting scratching my head thinking, why now would there be more people looking to sell than there was in the last two periods at the same time in the last 2 years in comparison to this year? If the boom was last year and we're now being told that possibly Fife property prices will drop, do you think that's what's driving it?
No, I don't think that is what's driving it. I think that it is individual circumstance that drives it. And we often talk about that, don't we? It's always circumstances that drive people's decision making.
What do you think that people have actually been saying, by the way, don't get born just now. Could you wait a bit longer than 9 months? Because I'm probably wanting to wait another year in my existing house. So just hold off the now. I'll cross my legs.
I don't think we'd go to that extremes. But I do think although there was a boom, and we've seen that the boom was primarily there because of what people were paying rather than anything else. I think what we're seeing now is actually people have come out the other side and have thought, right, now we can start planning. Things are normalising. That's what I think it is.
Yeah, okay. So let's look at supply and demand and that figure broken down today over some of the wee regions, like, for example, the Cooper area, which is KY14, KY15. So the amount of properties that actually came on and sold subject to concluded, sold actually over the line, subject to concluded missive, that is. In other words, it was sold, but it wasn't a keys handed over.
Yeah.
In Cooper, it was 35 versus 49. That's kind of in line with the overall picture. East Nuke, it was 18 versus 14. So demand clearly outstripping supply. Glenrothes is 63 versus 68, which is in line with the expectation. Leaving 52 versus 45, which is demand outstripping supply. St Andrews 34 versus 45, which is supply outstripping demand. That's possibly because St Andrews is at a higher price point in comparison. Hence the reason why there's more supply than there's demand, because not a lot of people can afford these high price points. Plus, not everybody wants to stay in St Andrews, to be honest.
True.
Easy to commute into St Andrews or go to St Andrews whenever you want and stay at a more affordable place at a better price point. That's the reality.
That's true.
You could effectively stay down. You could stay in East Nuke. You're literally 10 miles away from St Andrews, 10, 11 miles, just over the hill. You could stay further along in London Links and then Leaving, and you're round about 20, 30 minutes away. So you can just travel everything you want, and yet you've got a fraction of the price.
Yeah,
a two-bedroom
over 30 minutes.
Well, two-bedroom ex-local authority flat in exactly the same as what's in Leaving in St Andrews would be around about the 250,000 mark. Yeah, a two-bedroom ex-local authority flat in Leaving would be around about the 75,000 mark.
Yeah, 75, 80, yeah.
So when you look at that, 250 divided by 75, yeah, you're talking about three times more the price. So effectively, it's about 3 times the price, more than 3 times the price of a property, the same property in Leaving. So it just shows you what the land is worth in the St Andrews area.
Yeah.
I wonder if the opening up of another 1,000 houses getting built, over time, will actually stabilize that market from the rise, or will it bring it down a bit in line with I wouldn't say normal price points, but bring it down a bit more. That'll be interesting to see as that passes over the years when these houses are built, because you've got houses being built out in Garbridge, you've got Lookers, you've got St Andrews, a lot in St Andrews as well. So you've got all that area is getting a huge infrastructure invest in infrastructure for housing, and possibly, the new school at Madras as well being built to accommodate things like that. So, and then you've got everything else that grows as a result of that. You've got the university, which is clearly on a path to domination by actually putting their campus in Garbridge now.
Yeah.
That's an interesting one. They obviously want to increase the amount of intake that they're going to have as well, and how will that impact on St Andrews? That's another story.
Creating capacity, aren't they?
Let's then just drill it down. Therefore, in 2023, 1.05 homes came onto the market listed in Fife for every home sold, compared to 0.94 homes per property sold in February 2022. Now, that's quite actually interesting compared to the national statistics. In February 2023, 1.48 homes came onto the market in the UK for every home sold, compared to 1.1 homes for property sold for February 2022. That's quite interesting. There's less homes coming onto the market than there is listed than the UK average. I mean, but Perry, what does all this mean then for house prices and for Fife people thinking of selling?
I think we probably need to go back and reflect a little bit on last year, don't we? Because everyone seems to be comparing the current today with last year, and that was a bit of an anomaly, wasn't it? So, I mean, roll the clock back to autumn 2022, interest rates had been on the rise throughout the summer.
Yeah.
These increased interest rates were starting to have a subtle dampening effect on the UK property market. I think we kind of saw that a little bit here as well. But in the first 6 months of 2022, an average of 27,500 UK properties were sold per week.
Wow.
And that was 2 months before the autumn budget. Obviously, it makes a difference to some people what the budget says. And that eased it to an average of 24,229 UK properties selling per week.
Yeah.
So there's a big change in that after that budget.
Okay.
So 3 months after the autumn budget, it slumped to an average of 16,821 sales per week.
That was the famous Liz Truss budget.
Yeah, exactly.
Everybody went, oh my God, what's happened? We're no selling. And everybody was very fearful. Might I say, the budget today was actually quite optimistic. Very much a budget for employment. Very much a lot of incentives to get people back into work, which is absolutely the right thing to do, especially with the economy now, with 1.1 million jobs available and not enough people to fill them in real terms. So that's where they're having to find new ways to get people back into work, or encourage people who are over 50, like me, back to work. The doctors as well, doctors to stay in longer. Pension allowances, the maximum pension allowance has been completely gone. There's no maximum pension allowance anymore in terms of the amount over the whole period of the lifetime of your pension. So it used to be just over 1 million. Now it's been done away with completely. So that would really incentivize a lot of doctors, and they reckon they'll keep about 87% of doctors potentially could stay on as doctors without having to retire, without being penalised, because that's why they were doing it, because they were getting penalised with the taxation on their pension. The actual allowance every year is going from 40,000 to 60,000, which is another big bonus for doctors and people like that. Maybe no for the likes of us.
Well, talk about yourself.
Yeah, I know.
There's no us in this.
I didn't want to say, well, I'm all right.
You might as well. There's no us here.
I think most people know my
I know,
position.
but I think going back to it, though, I think what the stark reality is, because I mean, there's a lot of stats we were thrown there in this month, that quarter, the autumn budgets and whatnot. But actually, when you break it down and you look at it versus the first 6 months of that year, to then about September, October, the same year, to lose 9,000 sales per week on the back of what was done in that budget, that's a bit of a reality squeeze, isn't it?
What's the weekly average for February 2023 then?
22,192.
Okay.
So we're about 5,000 still short of the start of last year.
Yep.
But about a £5,000 increase on where we were at the end of autumn last year.
That's still quite encouraging, though. But that's UK-wide, remember? That's UK-wide. And then and when you go back to looking at the Fife numbers, that's actually still quite tolerable, the 536. 536 is very tolerable in comparison to it was less the years before. That's quite interesting, isn't it? Because the years before for Fife, it was less than it is this year for the number sold. And yet the UK, it's less sold than it's the other way around.
Yep.
So Fife is actually very, very resilient in terms of the number of sales, in terms of what's been listed. It's quite interesting. I'll take a quick question from Mark, actually. He's asked this, Mark Driver. Thanks for asking, Mark. How has the increased number of landlords selling up affected the situation? That's quite an interesting one. There's no doubt about it. There's a lot of landlords looking to sell up. In Fife, yes, we do have landlords looking to sell. We're putting their houses on the market. A lot are getting driven away because of the draconian legislation that's been brought in place, and that's putting them off. I didn't hear any incentives or anything like that, but then the UK government can't do any incentives for landlords because housing's a devolved issue in Scotland. So it will probably continue just now, Mark. I think. So yes, it does. It has effect. It will affect the rental market. The rental stock potentially will probably more than likely go down, which means that there will be more people clamoring for less houses in terms of rental properties. Because it's not the fact that they can't afford; it's the fact that their option is never to buy in the first place, whether it's through their bad credit history, whether it's through their on benefits, whether it's through they just choose to rent because they don't want the entry and the exit costs and the encumbrant position of owning a house and having to keep repairing it, improving it over the years, or they're here for short term, maybe a couple of years. So it doesn't make sense to actually buy. Unless you've got a meteorite rise of 30%, which has happened over the last 3 years. That's the only reason, if you had foreseen that happening, that you would ever want to buy within that short period of time, and knowing full well that you're going to exit after 2 or 3 years. So I think that is, hopefully that's answered your question a bit. So just come back to this then. Let me ask you a question, Perry. What was the effect of Liz Truss's budget in September 2022 then?
I think the first instant impact that we saw, and it really triggered the turmoil, I think, was in the mortgage market, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Every morning you get in and all you could see was providers withdrawing what was available to the public in regards to mortgage, wasn't it? I think funding was removed, mortgage rates then spiked, and the availability and pricing of mortgages was out of reach for some people, but it has improved more recently. Mortgage rates have started to stabilise again. We've seen that ourselves, albeit that they are higher rates. I know that, they're no doubt the 2% that people were getting before that budget, but there are still good options out there on good 5-year fixed deals. I think one that I looked at the other day with HSBC, for instance, was like 4.3.
And that's, how on earth is that possible with base rates at 4%?
I know.
And it's because of the swap rates with the banks in terms of the confidence they have in the UK economy. And then the swap rates are lower, therefore they can offer these attractive mortgages, the 5-year deals for people, for homeowners. So there's a huge bonus to actually having a stable economy and projecting that fiscal control in terms of the outward investment that we receive from other places. So you can see the huge benefits there is to have a steady pair of hands at the helm. And whatever government that is, it projects that. I mean, it was a Labour government that came up with this budget today. I'd go, it was absolutely fantastic. If it was an SNP government, hey, it was a really good budget. It actually made absolute sense. It kind of balanced the books. It made sure we were going where we were going. There's no everyone going to be right, by the way. And I'm no purporting to that. And I'm no purporting for one party. Hence the reason I said it doesn't matter what party came up with this budget. It would still be a really good budget in terms of where we are right now for stability and a safe pair of hands at the helm.
I think there is that, and I think you've hit the nail on the head there. And I think we talk about this quite often. We talk about clickbait and we talk about headlines and we talk about all those topics, don't we? But I think you've come away from watching that budget and you're transmitting that positivity about it, and I think that does come into it. And I think that housing market is driven by that sentiment and that confidence that people have. And so how many times do we go out to people, I'm hearing that it's no this and it's no that, and I'm hearing that we shouldn't be buying there now and that the markets are plummeting, and actually the reality is it's not, because who are you hearing this from? Who is that expert?
I'm gonna say I told you so, but did I not tell everybody for the last 6 or 7 months that there's no way we are going to go into a recession? Now the Office of Budget Responsibility has actually announced today, based on that budget, they don't think the UK economy will go into recession in 2023. I was right all along. Just appoint me the governor of the Bank of England and let me go on there.
You'd be bored with that, Jim. But I think as well, though, I think the reality is not just that. I think it is the low unemployment as well is a really strong position for us to be in just now as well. Not necessarily if you're an employer, but if you are employed, then it's a great place to be, isn't it?
It is good because it keeps the amount of money flowing in the economy and it keeps everybody employed. But the great thing is, as we had discussed in a previous show, actually, just recently, possibly at the weekend or the weekend before, we had discussed this about, where else have you got to go? If you've got record low unemployment and you've got you've got the right amount of tax coming in, and you can't cut costs anymore, where do you go with that as a business? As UK PLC? And the answer to that is as if by magic, you introduce more people to the workforce
Yep.
to earn more money and pay more taxes. Job done.
Which
I
is technically what
had
they've
no
done.
idea. This is actually really quite interesting in terms of where they are. So let me just explain to you what they said here, which I was quite enthused about, is the fact that they found 7 million adults of working age are actually not in work just now. That's obviously people on universal credit, but they actually said there's 7 million. There's 2 million job seekers as well. And so that's another avenue they can get. And then the other avenue as well as they can get is the over 50s with much talent and experience they have actually retired because their pension provision in that doesn't make sense. You'd get taxed more as a result of keeping working. It now makes sense actually to introduce these people to get them back into work to create more jobs in the economy, which creates more revenue to the exchequer, which UK PLC bolsters as a result.
Absolutely, but then it helps with
as the debt was 95% of GDP. It's like, what? It's like, could you imagine having your debt as 95% of your sales?
Oh, no thanks.
That's that. But I tell you what, America, Canada, and a few other countries are worse. You know, so I am enthused. I'm encouraged. However, the picture that I paint in my own mind isn't a reflection of what they've said right here. I still think inflation is going to be a difficult target to meet of 2.9%.
I just don't know how they're going to do that, Jim, from where we are over the 10% at the moment.
Well, you're not going to lose jobs, and you're going to create jobs. And you're going to introduce more money into the economy by creating more jobs. How are you going to keep inflation under control if more people have got jobs now and more money is actually chasing these goods? Exactly. I just don't get it. If anybody out there can tell me and just say in the comments they think that's going to happen, how inflation is going to drop, if that is the case, I don't understand how that's going to happen if unemployment is not predicted to go up at all. And we're going to introduce more money into the economy. That's one thing I can't get my head around, how inflation. But it might come over the next couple of weeks, couple of months, or whatever, and I'll discuss that at that point in time. So let's just talk about that then. Back to the housing market and how that will affect things. So you had said, basically, you're absolutely right. They both took a beating in the autumn last year, yet things appear to be easing because of the in that department. But in a nutshell, people are still determined how the Fife property are still determining how the Fife property market will go in 2023. Now, as you can see, what we've just said of the sales and homes coming onto the market, that's the listing statistics at the start of the show. The demand for Fife homes is still definitely at a decent level. Actually very similar to pre-COVID levels seen in 2016 to 2019, whilst listings have increased, meaning a greater choice of Fife homes to buy. So this is when it comes to the issue of Fife house prices. Because everybody goes on about, I had somebody have a go at me personally last night on a private conversation going about, you're having a laugh, Fife house prices are going to be dropping 10%, and you think somebody should buy a house now and forego that because it's going to cost them more money in the long run. And my response was to them, look, pal, you're arguing with the wrong person. Just stay in your lane and drink the Kool-Aid. There's no much else I could say to that. It's like, I'm not going to try and convince you. A man convinced against his will is of the same opinion still. I've been pretty right so far in terms of what I do, in terms of what I'm saying, in terms of what we're delivering, because this is all based on fact. This is no made-up rubbish, like somebody's opinion on Facebook or you saw somebody's opinion on YouTube, and you thought, that looks like it's going to be credible because it's come from a credible source, but where's the facts to back it up? So this is why we do so much facts and figures on these programs in order Mark actually said, never argue with an idiot because they don't know they're an idiot.
That made me laugh, Mark.
I'm going to show that on the screen. Never argue with an idiot as they don't know they're an idiot. You're absolutely right. Right. Maybe I'm the idiot. You never know, eh?
Maybe it's us. We're back to us again.
So, Fife house prices are falling. Are they?
Are they?
Don't tell me.
Oh, I don't know. You said it now, Jim. Of course, Fife house prices are falling if we think about it. I mean, the house prices that people were paying in the silly season, as we call it, 2021 to 2022, are not being paid today in March. They're just not in March 23. In 21, it was a bun fight, wasn't it? And we saw that all the time. I mean, the Fife property market was on fire. It literally exploded. And that was down to basically people paying and outbidding each other to secure a house because there was just so little of them. Those times are over, but the prices that are being paid for property now are still reasonable. And I think the thing that people forget
I'm glad you said that, because I had a vision of Henny Penny running about saying the sky's falling in.
No.
Is the next thing. It's like getting the Home Alone where he runs up the hall upstairs. It's like, wait a minute. Oh, it's reasonable. Sorry. You used the word reasonable.
I did use the word reasonable, and I think it is reasonable. And the reason that it's reasonable is purely and simply because it's stabilised, and the home reports that we see now are reflective of what things were, and that's a normal standard price.
So let me ask you a question next then. Is that a house price crash then?
No, it's just a house price adjustment. It's just everything stabilising.
Okay. So as Fife house prices then continue to drift slowly and steadily downwards throughout 2023, this is obvious. You know, most people have said they were going to stay stable, and, you know, that was predicted in the Courier, and I was the only one that went out there and says between 5 and 10% they'll drop. I mean, you know, it's the effects of interest rates and the affordability clip the wings of the many buyers. You could see that straight away, and that's why your demand is actually reduced. But the supply is there enough, and there's still enough demand to take up the supply. This is why I say it will take just a wee bit longer, double the amount longer than it usually took to sell before. It was 25 days before, and it's now about 60 days to sell a property on average in Fife. So it's good news, really, because Fife home buyers and sellers don't believe there'll be large house price falls happening. And it will make more people come onto the Fife property market in the spring and summer to buy and sell the property. As I said in recent shows, and even on articles on here and podcasts on the Fife property market, the lower priced, smaller sized properties sell more than the mid-priced, middle-sized properties. This is because the smaller properties are more attractive as mortgages are higher for the rates. And that puts a damper on home buyers' household budgets. You see, the classic example I always remember is the man from the Provy or the woman from the Provy.
Where's the couch?
The house. Honestly, and I've not used it myself, but I know the story. The story was always, you know, how much can I afford every week? Well, I can afford to pay £5 every week towards my payments. Okay, we can give you a loan of £500 over the next 6 months if you pay it back, you know, X amount per week, because that's what you can afford. All right, great stuff. I'll take the £500 because that's what they could afford. And then the next 6 months passed and things changed a bit. And it was like, I can only afford £3 now. Okay, well, we can loan you, you know, £300 now based on that. And the next 6 months passed and I go, well, I've got a wee pay rise and all the rest of it. I can afford £10 a week now. Okay, we can give you a £750 loan then if that's the case. And that's kind of how mortgages are working. And the fact that household budgets, people know they've got enough to do it. And if you want any more, then you have to look at one of your other budgets. For example, leisure, nights out, things like that. Even down to, you know, certain types of clothing. Do you want to really renew that car now? And that's the sort of things you've got to then compromise on if you and deviate that income in order to get that bigger house that you always wanted.
It's true. We often talk about that, don't we? About it's the kind of must-haves versus, but I need it. I need to have it. But do you need it? You must have some things. You don't need all things.
It's the need versus the want, isn't it? Oh, I want it. Yeah, but do you really need it? So if you really want it, my advice to you, I put my Martin Lewis hat on, bald head, just like him. And I would say, if you really want it, my advice to you is sleep on it overnight, whatever it is. And the next day, you've got the same feeling about it, then possibly it's, okay then. But the fact is, Is it a want or is it a need? A need is a definite. You have to have it because of certain circumstances. In other words, I need to get a new boiler because my boiler's broken down. Not, I just fancy a new efficient boiler because I could save some money. Okay, the boiler's going to cost you £2,500, and you're only going to save another £10 a week. And it's like, okay, well, that's £500 a year. That's 5 years to try and get that boiler back and pay back. That doesn't make sense.
No.
I found that out years ago when I went to buy a mini metro. This shows how long ago that was. Taggart's in Kirkcaldy. It was at the top of Roslyn Street. And I remember going in, and the guy said to me, when I was looking to buy a metro, because I liked the metros at the time, the Rover metros it was, and I said to them, okay, so how much is that car? And he's like, oh, that's £5,000. He says, however, if you buy a diesel metro, it will save you, like, instead of doing 30 miles to the gallon, it'll do 50 miles to the gallon. So you'll get more money on your, you'll get more miles for your money. I'm like, okay, so how much does that cost? Oh, well, he says it's another £3,000 more. Okay. Now, most people would go, hey, I'm going to save some money every time I get in my car. But I immediately went straight to my calculator and went, okay, so if it's 20 miles times, and I'm only doing about 12,000 miles a year, so you're saying to me 20 divided by 30, so it's going to give me another 67% efficiency. So if I do 67 and I times 12 by 67.67, I get 8,000. Now, if I take 8,000 and divide it out, and it ended up like I was going to save another £400 or £300 in travelling costs every year. And I went, okay, so I'm going to, you're asking me to buy a diesel. It's going to cost me £3,000 more to save me £300 a year. That's going to take me 10 years. The car's going to be defunct by that time, by the way.
In a scrapyard.
So it didn't make sense, did it?
No.
It didn't make sense at all. But that's how we think. And this is why I talk about this. And I did digress, but it was obviously to prove a point. So where are we then? Cost of living crush?
Well, I think, the cost of living crush is making it more, I think more mature homeowners are downsizing. I did that. So I understand where that's come from. And they're going to the kind of mid-size homes that are costly. Yeah. They're more costly to heat. And interestingly, in a few locations around the UK, upper quintile, the top 20% of terms of prices are immune to this downturn in demand. I think that's quite a surprise.
The upper quartile, yeah, okay. I know that because most people at that level are cash buyers. They've got the money. They could. The price really doesn't affect them. We could see that right now because we've got sort of a closing date on a property. It's at 650,000. It's only just gone on the market, and there doesn't seem to be any appetite for any restriction in what the people are wanting to offer. So you can see that straight away. I don't know what that is like for anybody else. But let's get back to the question about Fife house prices then. The house price data that many journalists use to judge house prices are between 6 and 9 months old. If a property has a sale agreed upon in, say March, it will complete. Now, the completion is the legal work done and money's transferred and the keys handed over in August or September and show in the land registry figures by November or December at the earliest. That's 8 or 9 months later. This is why I say every single time when I go in to see people is I'm going to talk about the home report value, but the home report value I'm just about to tell you is based on historical information, which could be about 9 months old. And I know what's currently coming through the market and what prices over the home report value they're getting. Yeah. So, yes, that is the home report value. However, I know what your end result is probably going to be based on the facts on the ground that I've got and the information, the evidence I've got right now, rather than 6 to 9 months old information and out of date. This is why you need to be able to influence the surveyor in order to show him the right information, the up-to-date information, because they just go straight for the registrar. They actually don't know anything from any estate agent about what everything's just currently gone for. That's why it's important, because you're better to have a better starting point in a home report and be able to go back from that rather than have to get a starting point, which is a shitty starting point, to be honest, try and move up from that.
Yeah.
That's the difficulty. So the key here is to have a very on the ball estate agent knowing exactly what the current market's like just now, rather than actually relying on the surveyor to deliver to them a valuation based on 6 or 9 months data, which is now out of date.
Especially when we've demonstrated earlier on, Jim, the way the market has changed so much, and it's almost changing in by season, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yet now, through some research, we've accessed on our data on house prices, a matter of just probably about a week old, actually. The listings per square foot. Now, this is actually, you've got to be a really a geeky person to get into this, to be honest. But that, hey, floats my boat. Shows that homeowners are putting their homes on the market at the sales per pound per square foot, what homes are selling for, by tracking the data on the average price per square foot for both listings and sales agreed. We can track exactly what is happening to house prices in real time. The data is currently at the regional level. I mean, more local data can follow soon. Yet it shows that what's happening today with house prices. In June 2020, here's a good one, and a classic example. In June 2020, the average pound per square foot for every listing in Scotland was £188.35 per square foot, and the average pound per square foot for every sale regionally was £171.39 per square foot on sales. Now the pound per square foot and foots on sales tend to be lower than the listings because smaller, cheaper homes have a higher propensity to sell than more expensive, larger homes. But compare it with August 2022. So June 2020, August 22, average pound per square foot for every listing in Scotland had risen to £198.62 per square foot, and the average pound per square foot for every sale regionally was £196 per square foot. That's actually almost even Stevens. There's no much price adjustment there.
There wasn't a lot of variance in it.
It wasn't June 2020. There was a big difference. In February 2023, though, this is the key here, the average pound per square foot for every listing in Scotland rose again to £205.94 per square foot, and the average pound per square foot for every sale regionally was £203.19 per square foot. So what does all this mean? House prices have dropped a few percentage points since summer, not the 10 to 20% that the doom-mongers have quoted. So crawl back under your shell, doom-mongers.
We no listen.
Bye-bye. Au revoir. Arrivederci. Also, the lowest point, actually, regarding house prices in all the regions of the UK in January 23 was January 23. And the figures that you see in these stats have a slight upturn in February 2023. Oh, I love a graph. Here we go. Right here. This is it.
Lots of information.
We'll delve deeper into these stats, okay? We have to be aware of the gap between the listing pound per square foot and the sale pound per square foot. If this gap gets too big, okay, sellers are getting too optimistic about pricing. So they'll suffer as their home languishes on the market, becoming stale, and experience shows they have to reduce their property and their asking price under what they would have achieved if they had priced it realistically from day one. That's quite interesting. Now that actually happens. You can see that right here. See that how it's stabilized in there. Look at the June 2020 and the August 2020, which we're talking about. Look at the unrealistic expectation there between what people were putting on and what they were actually getting. That was just completely unrealistic. And then it started to stabilize again, stay together. So the very fact that actually stays quite close together is actually a positive sign, because it means there'll be a healthy transaction rate in the marketplace for Fife houses and houses overall in Scotland. Remember, this is overall in Scotland as well. This is actually quite encouraging. And so my question to you then, Perry, have we been discussing this? Will house prices actually continue to drop in Fife then?
I think, certainly from what we've seen there, I think, yes, slightly. February 2023, the uplift in house prices maybe be a little bit of a blip, but unless something seismic happens, Fife house prices will stand around about, they say 10%. We're not really seeing that, but the average we're looking at is possibly 10% lower at the end of 23 than in the late summer of 2022.
It's a
With
foregone
you, that's slightly different, isn't it?
Well, it's a foregone conclusion, because if you look at the land registry and you look at what the average price in Fife was, back in February last year compared to February now, I'll see if I can get something up actually, or to now. Let me UK house prices. Let's look at this real time. Actually, I'll just copy. Let's and I'll put it on a different one so I can actually show it. I'll open up my window. The window outside, by the way. That's just the window on my computer. So here we are, right here, and I'll just bring it up on the screen, and I'll see if I can walk through this with everybody. Live demonstration. This is where you get nervous. It doesn't tell me what it's meant to. So this is the house prices here. This is the index here. So let's look at the most recent one, which is December. That's what they get them for.
Yeah.
And then we'll zoom down and we'll go into Scotland. And then we'll zoom down. There's Scotland. Look, there's Scotland just now in December 2022. So Scotland in December 22 is 187,224. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
And then Fife, if we go down further, we'll get Fife. There's Fife there, 173,968. Okay? Now, year on year, it actually looks like Fife's actually moved up. See that?
Mm-hmm.
So year on year, because that's December 21. But if we look back and look to where it is, what's going to happen in here, and I'll jump back to that screen if I can. Let me just bear with me. If we jump back to just a few months before, maybe around about September, August. We'll go August.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We'll try August and see if this works. See 195 in August?
Yeah.
In August. And then if you look at Fife house prices in August, it was 176. 112. Now, when you look at that, and as if by magic with my calculator, when I look at this, and I take, I'll take this off now because we've got that. So we've got 195,391, okay, minus 187,224. There's a reduction of 8167, okay? So 8167 divided by 187, yeah, 187,224. That's the one we're looking for. There's an automatic 4.33% reduction.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there's an automatic 4.3% reduction since August in Scottish house prices. If we look at similar to Fife house prices, 173, 968, 224, 2144. So we've got 173, 2144 divided by 173,968 at 1.2%. So see how that is? That's 1.2%. So it's no much. But you've got to remember as well, what we've got here is the house price that they're gauging about, it's gone up 5%, it's gone up 6%, it's gone up 10% or whatever, takes into account the monthly movement.
Mm-hmm.
So what's happening here is you've got a 12-month, what we'll call perpetual cycle. In other words, 1 month adds on, 1 month drops off each time. Now, as the 1 month drops off, the big pluses it we had before are disappearing out of that equation,
right.
And this minus is now coming in.
It's the equilibrium, isn't it?
That's why you're going to get to the end of the year, and all you don't see it right now because that headline there immediately says to you, when it says there, it's like you look at that and go, but wait a minute, Fife house prices in August were 9.7, and then you go back to saying, wait a minute, Fife house prices in December just passed were 5.7. Mm-hmm. So how could it end up at 5 and 10% at the end of the year? Because see how that's sneaking through now.
Yeah.
See how that's going from 9 to 5. So there's a 4% reduction in the price, and it's going to start going down more. So that's actually going to start adding up. Therefore, it's going to be a minus by the end of the year, more than likely. Mm-hmm. But it's nothing too much to worry about. It's all it is just a slight correction, and we're only back at prices where we were before. So for people, I mean, you don't buy your house to actually get the value of the house price, do you? You don't go, oh, house prices have dropped and I bought my house last year, but you're not going to be selling it this year, so it's irrelevant.
It doesn't matter.
The only reason you buy a house anywhere, the only reason you buy a house to live in is in order to stabilize your next move, whether that's up or down, because what you're trading is like for like. Because you're in the apple or the pear or the oranges, if we go back to primary school, apples and oranges, compare both with each other, you're in that, and then all you're doing is trading it for something else, a bigger apple or a smaller apple or a bigger orange or a smaller orange. So you're just trading like for like, and you're guaranteeing your place on the property ladder. It's when you're not on the property ladder that you open yourself to these fluctuations in house prices, and then you're effectively taking a risk. In terms of, if it's going to go up, then, oh my God, I've missed the boat. I've got to pay another 10%. If it's going to come down, oh, brilliant. I've actually benefited from a 10% reduction. But when and whether that happens is more effectively gambling. My advice is always stability is better. Because you're going to be in it long term anyway. Most people, when they buy their first house, 5 years, possibly, thereabouts, and then they move on to their next house, maybe another 5 years. Their next family home's usually 15, 20 years. I mean, I never thought that, because I've been in my family home longer than I've had a job. Or a job with a company. It's like, that's something to behold. But that's a classic example of how it is. So where were we then? Where were we with this?
So, I mean, you're talking about, if the Fife property market takes a corrective dip, and Fife buyers should consider not necessarily going in at the asking price, or should they?
Oh, that's a difficult one. Let me think about this. Yeah, that can only really said for some houses, because it depends on your market. There's a huge demand. If there's a huge demand, right, let's think about this. If there's a huge demand and there are 6 viewers or 6 people wanting to offer on a type of home that you want, house prices will hold up. But if you're the only person who has viewed it in the last 3 months, that's going to be a different story. It would be best to ask questions like, how long has the property been on the market and how many offers have there already been? That's the sort of questions you'd be asking. It's amazing how many agents will tell you that. It's like, there's no requirement to tell you that, by the way, but they just open their mouth and let their belly rumble. It's like, oh, that's the amount. So how many offers have you had in it? Oh, we've not had any offers at all. Great, I'll offer less.
Exactly.
Why do you think I managed to buy all my property below market value? Because everybody gives the game away, and I'm like, you just don't understand this game, eh? It's a sport, as far as I'm concerned. So if you're the only person that viewed in the last 3 months, that's why it is going to be a lesser price. My advice, though, if you've been sitting and you've not got the traction you've got for the last 3 months, and the photographs are right, the description's right, everything else is right, and your agent's keeping in touch with you and all the rest of it, is more than likely it comes down to a price realignment. And price realignments are technically viewed as what people go as, I'm not wanting to reduce the price of my house because I need this amount of money. Now, this is where skill comes in, because realigning a price is not giving money away. It's actually introducing your property to a different audience.
Correct.
And generally, the audience that you're introducing it to always has 10% extra in their budget. So you're realigning your price maybe by 5%, but that audience has got the 10%. So you're bringing it down to get them through the door, to push them back up. And it's a really good, effective strategy in how to do it. The other one as well is actually get somebody in the pipeline that's got a house to sell, because generally they're a good bet as well if you're not getting any traction, because if they make an offer based on their house selling, you can give them a time limit of, say, you've got 8 weeks to get an offer on your house, because that's the average. And if you get an offer in your house, yes, I'll agree to the price that you're going to buy it. That's another strategy to do that. And then also another strategy, which is really prevalent, is coming to its fruition now because of the skill and experience and wisdom it's required from estate agents now. Long gone are the days where you're going to sit back with your hands behind your head and go, how much are you offering? That's not going to happen anymore. Really, Get on the phones and start chain building. In other words, start finding somebody that's got a house, it loves that house, it's maybe got a house to sell, and you know their house is going to sell, and you've got the exact buyer for their house. So that can all happen all the way through and build the chains now. That's where experience and expertise come. That's where the people that have been in this business for a lot of years, 30, know exactly how to chain build, where the people that have been in for a short period of time don't understand that dynamic. They've never experienced that. They don't really know how to deal with chain building and what that is all about.
We're certainly seeing that. And I think as well on that point, I think it's really important to note as well, when you talk about that price realignment and a different market that you're entertaining with the house, I think as well for sellers, it's really important. We see it quite frequently, Jim, don't we, where they put themselves then under pressure point because they then find their dream home, they offer on their dream home, and they might not yet have an offer on their home. And then suddenly it's a whole different anxiety level, isn't it?
Yep. Here's a quick comment from Andrea. So if you're looking for a bargain property, you should consider the ones that have been hanging around with no interest. Absolutely. Absolutely. And you can see that because you can see the dates on mostly on Zoopla when they were first listed. However, there is people that their agent just can't do a skilled enough job to convince them in their own mind that they need to realign their price because maybe they don't actually want to tell them that because they've stuck their neck out in the first place and says, oh, you'll definitely get that for it. Or I'm not going to do it unless it's that. And then they've said, oh, well, put your house on. And if we get that, we get it. Other than that, we'll leave it on. But it's like, you know, you've got to have skill in doing that. You've got to understand the dynamic behind that. I've spoken to people recently about that exact example. But it was more on the point of, we'll find you with somewhere else to go and we'll get somebody to agree to your conditions first, not just the price. So what about the Fife homeowners that don't need to sell? What do you do with them?
Those Fife homeowners who are no selling, I think the thing that they really need to remember is that if your Fife property price drops in value by, say, 10%, if that's what it ends up being, it's still worth 90% of what you thought it was worth. You know, and I think people forget that. You only lose the money if you're going to sell it. So if you're not selling it,
if you realise that, that's the only way you lose it, yeah,
it's a hypothetical situation if you're not selling.
But also, are you actually losing money?
No, you're not, because it's money you didn't have anyway.
Yeah.
Bottom line is, it's money you didn't have.
And then the one you want to buy has actually come down in price as well to yours. So, exactly. and remember, 8 in 10 people move up the market when they move. So a 10% drop is a larger drop on the more expensive home than yours, meaning it's actually cheaper to move.
Yeah.
Work that one out.
Spend more money.
I said that too quick, eh?
Spend more money, it's a lot cheaper.
Let me think about that again and say that in a different way. Remember, 8 in 10 people move up the market when they actually move. Okay? So if a 10% drop when you're moving up the market, if you've got £200,000 house, you've lost 20. If you're buying something at 300,000, they've lost 30. So you've actually gained £10,000 by your move because the market's dropped. So you've not lost 20, you've gained 10 in that scenario. Work that one out. That's like that one when you give somebody a tenner and you give them 20 and then the next minute it's like, how have I got 40 quid? It's like, we only had 2 tenors. How have I got 40 quid now? How's that? So, I mean, meaning in essence is cheaper to move. The statistics and the sentiment now show that there's a lot of hope out there and there's still quite a lot of appetite for people to buy. So I would never say never, but the chances of a house price crash are very, very minimal. Like 0.01%, I would say.
Yeah.
I think stabilisation is more than anything. Final words, Perry.
I think for me, you've hit the nail on the head there. I think it's a stable market. I think it's an interesting market. And actually, you only need to worry about it if you're planning to sell your house. And actually selling might be a good thing if you're upsizing. Yep.
Want to know my final words?
Go for it.
Get it up, you doom murgers. I mean, I know this could come back to haunt me because somebody will go, I remember when you laughed.
I can see comments to flow.
But it's true. It's like, you know, I don't see anything on the horizon right now. I mean, I must admit, Credit Suisse has actually thrown a wee spanner in the works to me, because Credit Suisse, as investors, have now said, we're not going to put any more money into you as a bank. So that's why the banking sector just now in the stock market is actually quite worried, and the stock market has dropped. However, I'm straight onto my accountant saying, is that 40 grand moved up to 60 grand today for the allowance? Because I really want to invest in the stock market for my pension. And I'm maxed out there now, and I'm like, flipping heck, the stock market's actually dropped to around about 7.4 or thereabouts, and it might actually drop to 7. So I would love to be able to invest in it right now in a tax efficient manner, not just for the sake of it. In a tax efficient manner, because then you'll obviously get the added value into your pension of the uplift in terms of the tax credit goes on top of it. So nothing ventured, nothing gained. That's sort of like me. So that's who I'm looking at now. But the banking situation with the 3 banks recently, Credit Suisse, SVB, and another one in America as well. A wee bit worried, but our banking sector is very, very stable, and the only thing you need to worry about is the knock-on effect from the other banks, because they all invest in each other. But that's another story, and that's how that will affect things going through. It's like if one goes, they all go, and all the rest of it. And okay, we're back at 2008, and I told you so. And it's like, okay, but we're all in it together.
Exactly.
Yeah, except me, because I've hedged myself against that.
We're back to us again.
Anyway, thank you so much for coming on the show. I hope everybody got some good content out of that and understand why they need to sell, what they need to sell, and when they should be selling. It is probably now. Now's the time. If you're thinking about moving, this is probably the time to do it. There's a big bonus in doing it right now for the fact that we're coming to the best-selling season of all, which is spring. The flowers are out, the buttercups are just coming up. The daffodils are coming out right now. You can see them all coming out in full bloom. Just you wait. By the time you speak to an agent, by the time you put your house in the market, it could be probably about 2 weeks to 4 weeks from now, which is back into April. Middle of April. So middle of April, and then you're selling in the middle of April. It takes 2 months on average to sell.
You're not moving till June.
This is average: April, May, June, and then it takes 2 months to 3 months to conveyancing: July, August, September. Just in time, sell now. Think about selling now in time for the start of the new school season. That's what you need to do. Okay, thanks for coming on the show, Perry. Really appreciate it. And next time, guys, I'm Jim Parker for Fife Property TV, and this is Perry.